Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Astor B Watts Lunchtime Lecture. This Lunchtime Lecture is a part of our Errol Barrow Week activities as we continue to celebrate his legacy. For this week's presentation, we have asked former Member of Parliament, former Ambassador to Caricom, Deputy Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union, Robert Bobby Morris, as he dives into the topic, the Vision of Errol Barrow for the DLP and Barbados, the road ahead. Comrade Bobby Morris attended the Foundation Boys School. Then he went on to Erdiston Teachers Training College, then the UWA. He then earned certificates in active labor policy development from the International Institute of Labor Studies in Geneva. Additionally, he earned a certificate from Harvard Trade Union in industrial relations, holding various posts in the education sector, from teacher at Princess Margaret to a teaching assistant at UWA KFO, teaching at the Barbados Foundation Boys School, and a tutor at the community college. For the DLP Christchurch East Central seat during the time period 1986 to 1994, and was fundamental for the DLP campaign and management team from 2001 by-election in St. Thomas to the 2018 general election. I would now like to invite you to give Bobby Morris a round of applause as he delivers an excellent presentation today.
Party and the member. I believe that that has been very useful in past times to allow those persons who have an interest in the future and the success of the party to keep alive the memory of the greatest leader that we have had in Barbados and in the Democratic Labour Party, and also for them to share their views and their ideas. And I do look forward to the continuation of these discussions. I have been here several times, many times, and one of the things that I always recognize is that there was a cadre of people who kept coming. And that was not always the position in terms of some of the leaders in the party, including members of parliament at the time. It was really the followers, the people who had to go out there and work in the villages and the constituencies. They were the ones who often came to these discussions. And I hope that as they build again under the leadership, the current leadership of Mr. Thorne, that more people will come out to these discussions, because this is the opportunity for the party to share its ideas, its thoughts, and its programs. So I'd like to thank you again, and I want to say that I accepted the invitation to discuss Mr. Barrow and his impact on Barbados and his role in the politics of Barbados, because that is what brought me to the Democratic Labour Party in the very first place. I was doing some research in the 1970s on the rise of the labor movement in Barbados between 1920 and and 1946. That's formative years of politics in Barbados, in terms of parliamentary politics, in terms of party politics, because before that, of course, there were no parties in Barbados. We're talking about a situation where the Conservatives dominated and they controlled anything that was political. So it was Charles Duncan O'Neill who came here and started to in terms of politics, because politics should, to a large extent, be based on a continuity of people who give their support to a particular institution. Very important. It isn't that I would want to be in the politics and then my son is somewhere else. I believe we want to bring our families along, because what we're doing really is sharing in the values that we have. Political parties are about values. That's the fundamental thing about a party. You choose a party because of the values. And if you go to that party and you find that the values are not there, you're quite right to leave it. That is quite legitimate. And that is why when people leave one party and go to another, I ask myself, why? I ask myself all the time, why did they make the change? And I have very good friends who have made the change from the other party to this one, and I welcome them wholeheartedly. And I am very appreciative of what they bring to make this grassroots party the one that should be the government of Barbados and will be the government of Barbados. Now, I would say, first of all, that the legendary and iconic Mr. Barrow easily qualifies as the most successful political leader of Barbados as it relates to leading that country into constitutional advancement and into successful regional integration movements. You have to put the two of them together. And I want to be very, very clear here. We are looking at another attempt at constitutional advancement. I just want to remind you that Errol Barrow had his eyes firmly fixed on moving towards Republican status. But at that time, he realized that it was not a one-step move that was necessary, because remember, Errol Barrow was caught up in a debate about whether we should go independent or go into a federation. At that time, the federation, what's called the Little Eight, etc., was not feasible. So he made the realistic decision that he would go independent, because he could not get the support of the opposition at that time, which would be the Barbados National Party and the Barbados Labour Party, for him to go towards independence right away. So he had to take it in two steps. Independence, so to go towards Republican status right away. He had to go to independence, and then clearly he died too early to be able to go to the next step. So we now are the persons who should normally have been doing it. But clearly, I think the Barbados Labour Party recognized that their time had come, their opportunity came, because there's nothing that would have stopped us from going towards the Republican status, except that they lost the elections, and therefore they took the opportunity, and they are doing a very bad job, a very, very weak job in terms of where they are leading us into the Republican status. In my own view, I have heard several comments being made about the draft constitution that has come forward. I'm not hearing anything positive at this point in time. Maybe that will come later, but I'm not hearing anything positive in terms of what is before us. But I'm sure that really we have to remember that we made it clear that we were the ones to recognize the 50th anniversary of our independence. And the money that we spent, they said that that was too much money we spent on celebrating independence. I need to recall these things so that you understand the type of people that we're dealing with on the other side. And I'm always very conscious of the other side because, quite frankly, that is the thwart to the Democratic Labour Party carrying out the dreams and the ambitions of Errol Barrow because they are not complete. We still have a path to go along that direction, and we have the leader who is very clearly walking in Mr. Barrow's footsteps, and he will take the drive from the will of the people in terms of the next steps to go. So we will allow them, but we can't stop them easily from going ahead with this minute change that they're coming with and calling a constitutional amendment and constitutional changes. They're not doing anything. They're leaving us really where we were before. We haven't gone anywhere in terms of where they're going. So that's something that's coming. Now, let's look at Errol Barrow. Who was he? Born in 1920, a few years after the end of the First World War, in which people like, and these are names I'm going to call, Colonel Wickham, Captain Cipriani, and Norman Washington Manley shared that he has made sacrifices. That's what he's done. He could have cruised, retire, and come out. He decided that he would fight. And that, to me, is the Barrow spirit. That's the first thing I want to ensure you that we have to think about. Now, after the war, Errol Barrow studied economics and law at the London School of Economics. He was exposed to the socialist teachings of Professor Harold Lasky, who was advisor to the British Labour leader and politician Clement Attlee. Among Barrow's contemporaries at the London School of Economics were Julian Marishaw, an ex-fighter pilot and son of the noted Grenadian political leader Albert Marshall. And you remember that Barrow gave Marshall the job to start crop over. A lot of people don't remember the role that Marshall played in reviving crop over. But Barrow said in the first Independence magazine that was put out, Barrow said that we have to carry culture with us. We have to go back to our Barbadian culture if we are going to set up an independent Barbados. And Albert Marshall, who was his fellow fighter, was given the job of starting crop over. I know because I was part of that. Cavill will know about those things also, the role that Marshall played. The whole thing about burning, Mr. Harding and all that, that was resurrected. Of course, Forrest Burnham was the president of the West Indies Student Union at the time and a leader even then in discussions about Caribbean integration. And then there was his compatriot, Rolf Farley, Michael Manley, G. Arthur Brown of Jamaica, William Douglas, and Oliver Brown of Barbados. Remember Douglas, Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Douglas. Pierre Trudeau of Canada, and Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore. Those are the people who were at college with Errol Barrow. Those were his companions. And they brought their multiple experiences to share with Errol. So when Errol came back, he also had friends. He had friends that he could pick up the phone and call. And that is what you need in a leader. You need a leader who has friends, not who goes out as a star person. It's me. The world turns around me. You have to have people who are your equals, and you can say we are partners moving forward together. And that is what I believe Errol Barrow was. He was a partner, basically. He didn't want to be seen as a star boy. If he got that kind of respect, it's because he deserved it, not that he set out purposefully to be seen as some kind of star all over the world. I think we have some glamour person concepts in our leadership these days, that they want to be on the page of this news, front of this magazine and the front of the next magazine, etc., because they're building a personal image. Barrow wasn't about personality. Barrow was about empowering his people. And if he was empowered, he could empower them. So when he got that kind of recognition from these types of persons, they would speak about him. He would not speak about himself. He would not push himself. Other people would push him. After graduating in economics and law, being called to his bar finalists, as some people in Barbados who were leading now weren't called to their bar finalists. Understand. There are people who are practicing law in Barbados that weren't called to their bar finalists. No, and they didn't go to the LEC. That wasn't Errol Barrow. Those who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. And a lot of people know what I'm talking about. His life mission was conditioned by his birth and upbringing, which ensured that he could not fix his mind and efforts to a single place or space in the cosmos. His paternal grandfather, Robert Barrow, was a soldier of the West India Regiment, and St. Vincent. That's Errol's grandfather. His father, Reverend Reginald Grant Barrow, was exposed to the Caribbean while he was a theology student at Codrington College, becoming one of the first black priests of the Anglican Church in Barbados. He was seen by the church hierarchy as a radical and was forced to follow his religion outside of Barbados in areas such as St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Virgin Islands, and the United States of America. He engaged in radical politics and the formation of a labor union in the Virgin Islands. Barrow's uncle and mentor, Right Excellent Charles Duncan O'Neill, was also cosmopolitan, sojourning in Scotland, England, Dominica, and Trinidad and Tobago. Leaders have to build leadership. Leadership means sometimes not only changing your location, but changing the organizations that you join. There's nothing wrong in being in one organization, leaving it and going to another one. Nothing wrong with that. That's a choice that you make. If you're not comfortable with the one that you're in, you go to the one that you're comfortable in. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. It is the motivation. If you're doing it personally for your own aggrandizement, that's a different thing. If you're doing it to position yourself to help other people, that's something that's very important. They want people to understand that. Change is not bad necessarily. Change can be very, very positive, moving from one institution to another institution because you believe you can do more for people by that change. And that's what Errol Barrow would have done. He moved from the Barbados Labour Party because there was not the room and the space around him to allow him to do what he wanted to do for the people of Barbados. And it was our blessing that he came over. Am I right about that? Yes. Okay. As a youth at the Wesley Hall Boys School, he was socialized by his headmaster, the legendary Roll Parkinson, after whom the Parkinson School is named, to appreciate the role of Booker T. Washington and his colleagues who worked towards the improvement of the African. His uncle, Charles Duncan O'Neill, taught him to appreciate the teachings of Marcus Garvey, with the exception that rather than going back to Africa, Caribbean Africans should remain at home and build the Caribbean. Barr told me himself that when Garvey came here in 1937, he came out of school. He left Harrison College to go and talk to Mr. Garvey. And he talked to Mr. Garvey. Mr. Garvey said, yes, what do you want to know? He said, Mr. Garvey, how come you have on a fur coat and a fur hat in the hot sun in Barbados? He said, Garvey told him to catch the people's attention. Sometimes you have to do extraordinary things to catch the people's attention. And why don't we say thank you to Mr. Biden for making sure that Garvey has been forgiven? He should never have been in jail. He should never have been in jail, but Garvey is our Garvey. Let us understand that. That is our Garvey. So we thank Mr. Biden for doing that. Now, I'm giving you background because I believe if I talk about a man's values, I should know where he came from. I want you to know. I'm not taking for granted. I had to study this. I am not thinking that you know. So I have to tell you. So be patient with me as I do that discourse. It is important that we locate Errol Barrow's place in the struggle against colonialism at the national level before we turn our attention to his work at the regional level. This requires us to contextualize him in relation to patterns of national leadership which were evolving in the first half of the 20th century. One of the major characteristics of the transatlantic English-speaking governing elites and those with pretensions to that group was an almost complete acceptance of British sovereignty and the concomitant inferiority adopted towards British imperialism. Most of this leadership accepted what has been described as an Oxbridge education, resulting in an Oxbridge condescension, a Bloomsbury aestheticism, combined with what appeared to be a concern for the welfare of the masses, and it was tinged by a disdain for their persons. How did they show up this disdain for the masses? And they're still doing it now. They treat them by fetes. They give them a lot of food to eat, liquor to drink, walk up. That is what they do. It's a sense of condescension. We use you and you worship us. That's not what I'm getting in this Democratic Labour Party. Not from Errol Barrow down to the current leader. And don't let them fool you about culture. That is not culture. That is not culture. That is false. It is corruption. It is corruption. Let's call it by what it is. There are different forms of corruption, and it's corrupting the minds of the young people. It is changing the values that our generation had. Seriously. So much so that I am counting to see how many fatalities by guns we will have at the end of this year, 2025. I am that bothered then. I am that bothered. Because it becomes entrenched in us. It wasn't a thing of Errol Barrow's time. No, no, no. That is a recent thing that has been coming to us. Such leaders adopted what I call liberal reformism. And this constitutional change is a kind of liberal reformism. Reform is not about change in the real sense. It's really superficial. We did something. We went all over Barbados. We asked questions and we put out a document. That is reformism. It is not radical. It does not touch the root of what we need to do to carry our people forward. Because some of them don't really believe that the masses are effective partners in the democratic process. They use the masses. They don't really work with the masses. Those of us who are social democratic leaders, we are the masses. We are not leading the masses. We are the masses. We are part of the masses. So our job, our task, really, is not just reform. It is further than reform, because what we need is a significant change in the lives of our people. A very positive, significant change in the lives of our people. And it calls for a lot of thinking to get that done. A lot of strategizing. And you have to be in the world of the real. It is not about hoping that people will give you a lot of money for climate change. It's not about hoping that someone will give you a lot of money for reparations. If that happens, you're lucky. But people who have wealth don't just give it up like that. You know that. So it's about discipline. It's about discipline. Errol Barrow understood that he had to be disciplining the people of Barbados. And of course, the major thing he did in terms of disciplining the mind is education. Education disciplines the mind. The mind controls the body. Let's understand clearly. The mind controls the body. You discipline the mind by education. So that is number one thing that he believed in. And you have to talk about philosophy. That mind has to be based on the philosophy that drives it. If you put water in a car, it's going to run anywhere. That's not fuel. You need water, yes, to cool it down. You have to put gasoline. So your mind has to be attuned by what you imbibe, what you hear, what you listen to. That will drive you in terms of where you carry yourself and the people around you. So, in Barrow's time, Marxism, Stalinism were becoming popular. But Errol Barrow called himself and the others, as a person with him, not Marxists, not Stalinists. They were social democrats. They did not believe in expropriation of private property. They did not believe in state nationalization of everything. They didn't believe that. They didn't believe it could work. And the countries that have gone there are not doing too well in the world. Some of the countries that went there, and the Caribbean countries that tried it, ended up with a lot of people dead. Grenada and so on. And I'm not romantic about these things. I'm talking about history, what history shows. Not what people will dream and think, but what history shows. What history shows. Freedom is the most fundamental value for human beings. And they don't want to be controlled either by the totalitarianism of the state or by business. Either one, either left or the right, is not really applicable to the normal human who wants to be free to choose. and neither of those extremities allow that freedom of choice. So Errol Barrow decided to be a social democrat, and that is what we have been in the Democratic Labour Party. We believe in social democracy. It means that you do have to try to take control of the commanding heights of the economy. You have to develop that. It means that you do have to have control over your military and police forces. You have to have control over education and all the institutions of socialization, including the church. You have to have some control over all these agencies of socialization. Because we're saying the mind is fundamental. Barbados is a collection of minds. Too many people see it as a collection of bodies. Too many people see it as a collection of bodies that you feed and you clothe and you tell what's up. The mind. Barbados is a collection of minds, and once we understand that, we will do like Barrow and focus on how do we get our minds trained, disciplined. And don't think that training and discipline talks about the army and that sort of thing. That's not the kind of discipline I'm talking about. Discipline means following wholesome ideals and principles and practices. That's the kind of discipline I'm talking about. So social democrats tended towards economic planning, central banks, budgets, fiscal policy, development of capital infrastructure, provision of free education, health, and other services to develop a middle class based on merit. They were essentially modernizers who saw politics as philosophy in action. That's what politics is. Politics is philosophy in action. You have to have a philosophy, and then you have to put it in action. It must take meaning. It must take shape, not just words. So if you call something democratic socialism, how does one describe it? You come to Barbados and you see education free for everybody, you know it is in place. And all the other things that Errol Barrow had to put in place, they were not there. Understand that? They were not there. Again, I can become personal sometimes. My father was a policeman. He wasn't the poorest person in the world. But sometimes because he had a couple of children, I'm at foundation before the 11 plus. Barrow gave us the free thing. My name up there, right? School fees not paid. I tell you, when Barrow put up the free school fees, and my name didn't go there, it felt so good. You know what I mean? And it wasn't me alone. There were several people whose parents were struggling, and they wanted their children to get the best, but they didn't have free access to education. So we take it for granted now, but it was not always like that. Errol Barrow did that. The Oxbridge elite of moral reformers, that's the grand elements in that group, tended to rely heavily on the advice of British governors and their bureaucracy. They prized the receipt of imperial honors and favors and were bound by British conventions. They tended to adopt British culture as a standard and were reluctant to accept the existence of a viable alternative Caribbean culture. Errol Barrow was unflinchingly anti-colonial, and it is noticeable that he never accepted honors of any kind. Name the honors that Errol Barrow had. Name any British honor that he had. Tell me what it is. He refused to accept honors. According to Gene Holder, in 1975, he declined an honor even higher than knighthood preferred by Queen Elizabeth II, as he had only recently been engaged in creating national honors for independent Barbados. Errol Barrow said, no, thank you, Queen. No, thank you. If you're going to give me a Barbadian honor that I created myself too, I will have to think about that. and he probably would not have taken it either. Because honest sometimes give the, when you call me Bobby Morris, that's the honor you want. Somebody give me a what they call them again, a companion honor or something like that, and somebody give me a gold crown American thing. What are they? When you call me Bobby Morris, that is the honor that they want. Because you're saying you are like me. You understand what I'm saying to you? I'm not saying don't give honors. Give honors. But it's what people take these honors to mean. That's the important thing. What do they take the honors to mean? Some of them think that they put them in a class by themselves, a separate class. Like when they get on the copy of front page of a tennis magazine, all of a sudden you're like God. You're the biggest thing in the world. Understand? They flash about the place because what they want. They want some kind of honor, some kind of respect from people. That is what drives them. I don't think that was Errol Barrow. I don't think that's Ralph Thorne. Sorry, I'm going to call your name sometimes, sir. Get accustomed to that. Call your name sometimes, all right? Because you must know who your leaders are, and you must know what drives them. And you must understand who they are, fundamentally. Not what they pretend to be sometimes. Get to know who your leaders are. And you do that by holding them close to you. You can't keep them afar and understand them. Invite them to your home. Don't wait till they call. Invite them to your home. Come by me, Rafi. I in St. John. I in St. Joseph. Come up where we want you. Reach out. It's a weakness of black people. We hold a lot in ourselves. But we don't know sometimes how to reach out. You have to let people know how you feel about them. You have to get in a line behind them. That is how you show loyalty. That is how you show respect. And not because you have a title, or you have a doctorate, or you have a this and that. No, that's not what I'm about. Everybody didn't have any doctorate. All he had was the first degree in law. Understand? The greatest man that ever led a government in Barbados had a law degree. And he was capable of transforming this entire country with that. Understand? So don't let them fool you by the superficialities of life. Don't let them fool you that life is that simple. Don't let them fool you that because somebody has a doctorate, that a person has answers. They got millions of doctors in the world. Millions. Millions of doctors in the world. People with doctorates. Yeah. So from now on, it's become easier. Men with the body will not be PhDs around the place, one or two. And then all of a sudden, some college university, people getting educated can be all about the place. Believe me. There are going to be so many of them. There are going to be some of them in subjects that you won't even believe yet. But I'll do a degree on the mosquito and the way how it buzzes. Well, that's a different thing. But relax. I just want you to relax as I take you on this journey. I'm taking you on a journey, but I want you to relax your head. Now, he refused that honor. It was largely because of his perception that the leaders of the Barbados Labour Party were too reluctant to break with colonialism to the extent of settling for a federation that was not independent. It would have been a subservient federation that Barrow decided to wrestle power from the Barbados Labour Party at the national level, and this he succeeded in doing in the short period between 1955 and 1961, based on a manifesto which promised wide and sweeping change at all levels of the economy and society. And I want you to put this in your mind. You know, Errol Barrow got beaten at the election. You know, in 1956, he got beaten in St. George. You know, Glenn Carrick, grandfather was one of the people who worked against him, who campaigned against him. Well, these things go way back. These things go way back. when grandfather was on the men out there in St. George working with the business classes against Errol Barrow. I know that is a fact. The history goes right back. The history goes back in terms of that conservative element that has been built up in some people, and you'll find them very strongly in the Barbados Labour Party. Democratic Labour Party people are more radical, more social democratic. So between 55 and 61, Errol Barrow was able to create a manifesto which gave him a platform for change for Barbados. Now, William Demas, I think you all know that name, William Demas, in the foreword to his book, Change and Renewal in the Caribbean, has written, and listen to this one, I quote from William Demas, violence, let us admit, at certain specific times and in certain given circumstances is probably the only means of achieving change. Now let me say why he said that. At the time when Barrow was planning to transform Barbados, Fidel Castro was bringing his form of change to Cuba, perhaps based on the circumstances mentioned in Demas's reference cited above. Mr. Barrow's and Barbados' circumstances allowed him to plan and execute a peaceful revolution. I don't expect, unless things get along the same path as it's going right now, the hardship, the stress, the gangsterism, it could get to violence there. I want you to understand clearly. It can get to violence. The Democratic Labour Party has never stood for violence. We believe that we can manage change. And Errol Barrow showed that. Do not be surprised if what you are seeing is similar to what happened to Jamaica. I want you to understand I came up as a young man with all the terror in Jamaica. What I am saying is frightening for my country. The kind of gun violence that I am seeing, I never expected this. And why is it coinciding with this regime? I don't have to tell Barbadian persons everything. Think. Think. Why is this violence, overt violence, gun violence? And I'm going to put, as I go through, I'll put some other things that time with that for you to understand where we are. It's in a very serious place. We are in a very serious place. That's why I want you to remember Barrow. I want you to remember Errol Barrow and what he did, what his policies are, because I'm sure that the Democratic Labour Party will be faithful to the democratic socialism of Errol Barrow. I'm very convinced that that is what's going to happen under Ralph Thorne. I have no doubt about that. There's no anybody else out there who are offering themselves to lead this party that understood these things. I'm clear in my mind about that. So my choice with Ralph is clear. It is clear. There's nobody else out there. None of those pretenders that are interested in taking on the onerous work of carrying forward a country like ours from where we have come to where we have to go. And it will never, ever be a smooth transition. There will always be peaks and valleys. But we have to be able to be manful to the task and take it on. Very, very important. Barrow's success in the elections of 1961 could partly be accounted for by the fact that Grantley Adams, later the right accident, was totally occupied with the federal experiment of 1958 to 1962. In 1955, Barrow had lost an election campaign for the federal parliament, While he has supported the concept of federation, he has been critical of its status and operations and of the leadership of Grant Adams. The Jamaican referendum of 1961, resulting in the defeat of Norman Manley, set off a string of events resulting in the eventual dissolution of the Federation in 1962. Thus ended Manley's dream of a West Indian nation standing shoulder to shoulder with all other nations of the world. That's inverted commas. Jamaica proceeded to independence in 1962 and was followed by Trinidad and Tobago in the same year. The remnant of the great federal experiment was the Eastern Caribbean, which was sometimes described as a pejorative manner as illiterate. Errol Barrow could hardly have been enthused at having to become involved in trying to make a success of this and result of the failure of others. He was a newly elected leader, unlike others who had been in the forefront of national and regional leadership before him. It would appear that Barrow reluctantly decided to take a leading role only after Britain decided to reduce the constitutional status of Grenada after investigating alleged corrupt practices by Eric Geary. Barrow viewed Britain's action as an indictment of an entire country and felt it portended for the other territories as Britain, while indicating it had no intention of reducing the constitutional status of Barbados, could not give the same assurance in relation to the other colonies. Barrow began to take a closer look at the negotiations for the Federation of the Eastern Caribbean. He allowed Sherburne to be the center for discussions, gave two senior ministers, Winter Crawford and Erskine Ward, mandates to negotiate, and allowed senior public servants like Fred Cozier, Harold Brewster, Gene Holder, and Clifton Maynard to lend them their skills in the effort. He was well aware that Britain was not overly enthusiastic in its support. The group did not have the critical mass to withstand possible penetration by communist forces in the region. More importantly, Britain was not prepared to provide the level of funding that the venture required. While Britain was reluctant to provide more than 75 million EC over 5 years, its own financial advisor suggested that the real need was for 215 million EC. So Britain wasn't serious. By the time Britain wanted to offer the 75 million, that figure was unacceptable to those negotiating for the Federation. In the meantime, internal dissension among the 8, primarily over the power sharing between the federal government and the individual units, led to a severe weakening of the proposed center. The issue of control of the Antigua Post Office caused Mr. Byrd to withdraw Antigua, and he was joined by Montserrat, Grenada. Grenada had already proposed to enter an improbable unitary government with Trinidad and Tobago. Barrow's decision to withdraw from the effort caused him the loss of 2 of his cabinet ministers, Crawford and Ward. They left. You can survive and grow when people leave. Sometimes you grow better. If they keep you back, what would you want them for? They left because they had a difference. But you believe that we don't know from the passage of time who was right? Do we have a federation yet? Errol Barrow knew it was time to go alone. He was a bright man. He was not a dreamer. Not that I'm pulling anything down against dreamers, because dreamers have their place. But he was not a dreamer in terms of politics. Earl understood that you got political results by hard work, not by dreaming. You have to apply yourself. You have to do things. You have to make decisions, and you have to lead. You have to lead. And when people behind you are not following, you let them go too. Those are decisions that you have to make. That is what leadership is all about. By 1964, apparently Barrow had already decided against political federation and for economic integration, according to Gene Holder. Barrow, accompanied by Holder, Steve Emptich, you all know that name? Fred Cozier, you know those names? And I'm going to say to Ralph, get some names too. Get some big guns, intelligent people, hardworking people. You cannot do it by yourself. Make sure that you're very selective in terms of the kind of people that you're going to pull in to let them come to work. It's no easy thing out there. It's some glamour and some glory at the end, but it's a lot of work. So get some workers with you. You need workers. He flew to Antigua in a plane piloted by Frank Delisle, later Sir Frank, who was the founder of LIAT, met with Bird and Bramble to discuss a free trade association. A lot of you don't know, Errol Barrow is the man who really started what became Carifta here. I want you to understand. It's not just Caricom that he was involved in this, Carifta too. In a speech to the Barbados Parliament in 1973, Barrow laid claim to initiating the steps leading to the creation of Carifta. I quote, "I can now disclose that it was on the 4th of July 1965 that the Prime Minister of Guyana met with me in Barbados at my invitation to discuss the possibility of establishing a free trade area between our two countries in the first instance and the rest of the Caribbean at such time as they would be ready to follow our example." In his book, A Destiny to Mold, Burnham stated that, and I quote, "Barrow first was inspired by the idea of a free trade association in this part of the world." Errol Barrow. Errol Barrow. And in time we will hear my brother's dreams, I know. Because I know he will be turning his eyes to the Caribbean too. He's not going to be a Barbadian person. The evidence seems to point to the fact that after the failed federal venture of 1958 to 1962 and the failed attempt at federating the Eastern Caribbean, it was Errol Barrow who took the lead in proposing a free trade area for the Caribbean, which once established became the bedrock and sheet anchor of future successes in regional integration. The three Bs of the Caribbean, Barrow, Byrd, and Burnham, were the signatories to the Dickinson Bay Agreement in 1965, which became effective in 1968 and led to the formation of Carifta, the Caribbean Free Trade Association. Part of the reason for the success was personal. Barrow was Byrd's attorney in relation to his party business in Antigua. I don't know if Ralphie has some relations in the rest of the region, but I hear that he does some law in the rest of the region too. And he has his friends, he will disclose them. I understand he and some more legal luminaries. I want to hear you. That friend of mine there. Well, I wasn't going to say anything. I wanted you all to say that. They're legal luminaries. Don't think that they're only in Barbados, you see? But again, they don't broadcast these things. I will talk them out. I will talk you to them out. Because we go back far enough that they can do that. These are legal luminaries, not of Barbadian status, but Caribbean status. And I hope you understand what that means. If you have not tested yourself outside of Barbados, you haven't fully tested yourself. Because we're Caribbean people. We have to test ourselves in the region. So that is behind. The three Bs, then, these three people, we went forward. And as I said, Barrow was advisor to Byrd. He was his attorney. And as you know, Byrd was a very powerful person in Antigua. In fact, it goes from Byrd to Byrd's son-in-law now. The current prime minister, I think, is related to the Byrd family. So the Byrds are still, in a sense, controlling Antigua. Barrow didn't have that kind of continuity here. Barrow's family, neither his daughter nor his son really took up the politics and that sort of thing. And then the others two, either in the Barrow family or the O'Neill family, haven't really followed through. So then other generations come along, other people have to come around. Because one country does not have the same culture as the other country. The major aims of Carifta were to increase, diversify, and liberalize trade between member countries within an environment of fair competition. The territories were then in the fledgling state of developing import substitution, manufacturing, and were looking for markets to sell their surpluses and we're also hoping to absorb many of the chronically unemployed. And I'm going to put back in that seat as they go. The question about why do you develop economic initiatives and imperatives? I think I better jump to that for you in terms of Barbados. I want to jump to that because I want to give you a broad sense of Barrow as more than a Barbadian man. Do you all, or well, some of you are young, have you ever heard about the Barbados Development Bank? Okay. Barrow believed in development planning. He used to write a 5-year development plan. At the end of that 5-year development plan, you could go and see, did you achieve? This government came up for the first time with something called a strategic plan. They've never used it. They've never used it. They set up a strategic plan, and it has never been utilized by the bureaucrats that are supposed to do it. Barrow used to put up a development plan at the end of which he could ask, did we achieve the things that we wanted to do? It's of that development plan. Back then I was a member of Parliament for Christchurch East Central. That from the time you hit, they're coming from St. Patrick, coming from St. Philip, they're coming from St. Patrick's. And from the time you hit a place called Newton, the industrial estates right away down the line. Gildan is still big and large and in charge at the roundabout. There were estates right down there. If you went down Willie, industrial estate, banks, breweries, and what have you. If you went on the harbor, industrial estate. You all remember that? The ones who are older than 50? From your memory? That's what, huh? Gazettes. Errol Barrow did that. Name one other prime minister. One other prime minister since him that did something like that. Just name one. Name one. Even the DLP that was able to set up located businesses that can help young people in that way. And it didn't have to be in export manufacturing of that kind. It could be other things. Errol Barrow did that. You need to understand what you have to glorify the man. He got it done. And I tell people already, I am 77 years old. Errol Barrow died at 67. He didn't live very long. In a real sense. So when you start thinking about what he was able to achieve, you got to talk about his manhood. And before he was a man to work, he had to be going through the school and university and all that sort of thing. So he did not have a huge living space. He didn't live into any 80 and 90 and that sort of thing. Earl had to do it and do it quickly and do it well. Did he succeed? Did Errol Barrow succeed in transforming our country? He did. All of us are benefiting from it still. Listen, integration was not only about trade. Do you remember something called the Caribbean Multilateral Clearance Facility? Do you know about the Caribbean Broadcasting Union? Do you know about the Council of Legal Education? Caribbean Examination Council? Caribbean Development Bank? Those are Errol Barrow's initiatives. He was part of all of that. He was part of all of that. So he was not only operating in Barbados, but he was part of that regional outlook. Those are the shoes that we are asking anybody who takes over Barbados to be able to put on their feet and keep moving. Put them on him. Put them on you, Mr. Thorne, for the time you have, and train people in that direction. We have so much still to do. And that is why we moved into Caricom. By 1973, Caribbean leaders were satisfied that progress had been significant enough to move to a higher stage, formation of a common market. Mr. Barrow again played a leading role in the transformation. The Treaty of Chaguaramas, giving rise to Caricom, was signed on the 4th of July, 1973. I'm asking my leader, to push for the 4th of July every year. This is just a request I want to make. When you are in charge of this country, the 4th of July, there will be a debate in our House of Assembly on Caricom. There will be a debate in our House of Assembly on Caricom issues. I can't say that we can push right now and get any Caribbean nation going. Caricom is still working its way through. I believe that our destiny, our generation's destiny, is not to live with the feeling that there cannot be a Caribbean nation. And we must have the audacity to keep hope alive. To keep hope alive. Erskine Sandyford had set up a Caribbean Association of Parliamentarians. And it met about 4 times. And then it faded away. I want you to do that again. Push for it. So that Caribbean people meet. They can meet in one country or the other, members of parliament, etc. To push this Caribbean. We have become so insular to a very large extent. All the friend about the world and so on, we get on, but insular. And I believe that you have the competence, capability, and the interest pushing the region to another level, the next step. Because again, I'm looking at the north, I'm looking at the big country where the big changes have just taken place. I'm watching that very closely in terms of what that will portend for all of us. I'm looking at the party that has just come in terms of what that will mean, in terms of the future of people like ourselves. Even that dependence on the IMF that we've now gone into in a way that Errol Barrow and Sandy Ford very, very strongly. Do you remember Tom was the first person that went to the IMF? I hope you all remember that Tom was the first person that took us to the IMF, the Barbados Labour Party. I remember that a lot of teachers lost their jobs at that time. My contemporaries will know about these things. The young people don't know, so I do have to raise these things. We always were afraid of the IMF. We always said, look, we want our national authority to manage. Once you go into those institutions, you lose that. You can fool who you want to. But once you go hand in mouth to those institutions, you can't bite the hand that feeds you. Huh? Understand that. And now Mr. Trump is telling you climate change is a hoax. And when the United States talks, remember, the world listens here. The world listens, so the talk, you have to now see where that is going in the future. Now, during this period, the economies of the various countries in the Caribbean were affected by the oil crises, IMF conditionalities, which were imposed to correct the debt problems they faced. Some countries, such as Jamaica, Trinidad, and Guyana, were in the throes of political change, which led to destabilization. The region was divided into camps of those supporting and abetting Castro in Cuba and those who supported the Washington Consensus. I'm being personal here. Again, Barrow said that we are friends of, and he said we are satellites of, all right. Friends of all, but satellites are of none. Do you think Barrow didn't really know who his bosom friends were? I have a lot of friends. I don't have many bosom friends. And Errol Barrow knew exactly that we belong historically in a particular grouping. And although he would not join against other countries like Cuba, he wasn't likely to take us down the road of communism. I will make this point about Errol Barrow over and over again. Errol Barrow is a social democrat. He was and is in terms of his continuing presence. He would never and would never be totalitarian. It's not in the man's nature. Just as he could never be racist either. I make the point, Errol Barrow could never be racist. No person. Man, I make this point, and I'm not ashamed to say it. Although we can have issues about what happened in terms of slavery, that has gone. That has gone. Barbados is our Barbados now. We're not going to divide it in this race and that race and the other race. That's not Errol Barrow. That's not Errol Barrow. It's not Ralph either. We have a tendency to want to bring up those that are less possessed, to bring them forward. It does not mean that we are going to start a war with citizens of our country. That's not going to happen. It does not make sense. It will not take us anywhere. It's not taking anybody anywhere. Errol Barrow came into my office when I was running in 1986. He came with a father and son, Mr. Bernstein and his son. And he sat down. He sat down. I had a map of my constituency, and I had my tithes where I thought I was winning, not losing, da-da-da. He asked me, how you know? And I told him how he knew. I could pinpoint how I knew in terms of the strategy that I was using. And he said to me, we win this election. Because from what I had discussed with all the people I went throughout the constituency, you've gone to all these houses. Candidates, you've gone to all these houses. The people know you. Listen to me. He said, I've gone to all of the rum shops. The people know you. You win elections by working hard. And Errol Barrow said to me, how many pairs of shoes do you wear off? I said, 3, sir. He went back to the next group when we had a meeting with the workers. He didn't tell him that he had a discussion with me. He said, unless you've worn off 4 pairs of shoes, you can't win the election. I heard him there. He was a master. But what we're saying is a call to work, okay? All of you are on standby to work. I want to be very, very clear. The reason why I'm here is not only to tell you about Errol Barrow, I'm telling you about you too. Hard work. If you haven't gone through your constituency, if you are a candidate, at least 5 times, understand what I am saying. Unless you have canvassed the house 5 times, don't come and tell me that you have worked. And you're coming to show me. You're coming to show me the list that you have, who you went at, when you went there, how many times you went there. You're calling the names of people, and they can call your name when they follow down behind you, because that is the kind of work that we have to do, because that's the work that Errol Barrow set us. So let me summarize this part of Errol Barrow before I go on to the second part. You're ready for that? I hope you are. I'm going to keep you long because I'm not coming back in here for a good while. Believe me. You hear me? I'm not coming back in. I'm not that available. 2/3, tell you the truth. I'm be honest with all of you. I'm getting tired, getting old. So when you have me, you have me. So please listen to me. Please give me your hearing. Errol Barrow proclaimed the inestimable bonds of consanguinity linking our people. The inestimable bonds of consanguinity linking our people. We are Caribbean people. We are Caribbean people. They're not them and us. We just got off at a different port. Sometimes from a different ship. Our future is intertwined. And it can't be just talk. That'd be very real. Ralph has to think about that. How we're going to make the next step in terms of Caricom. Very important. Has to be part of the agenda. A commitment to the principle of mobility and people interaction. We have to look at what used to be. It is not as it is now. The lived daily experience of integration with ordinary traders and hucksters and so on. Not too sure that it's still as much as it used to be, but we have to encourage it. To use the collective wisdom of the people. Barbadians are well trained, they're bright. Guyanese still. Jamaicans still. Pull it. Pull it. The need to secure our food supplies. Price of food is the thing that will keep poor people poor, and it should not be so. If our government cannot feed us at reasonable price, and if these supermarkets can gouge out or like something is wrong, whether it is poultry or black belly sheep or whatever. Listen, when I was ambassador to Caricom, Guyana asked for our black belly sheep. He said, yes, we will send the semen. You hear what I said? We will send the semen. Inseminate sheep. Not take up all our sheep and send them down. We have to feed our people too. So I'm not hearing enough about that, because the man who is in control of it here in Barbados, Leroy McLean. Leroy is an excellent person, you know. Tell you the truth, I always hope that he would remain in the politics. I always hope, because when Barr did that mirror him and speak Ralph, Leroy and I were the two co-chairmen behind him. And he always regretted how Tom changed up the boundaries to take Leroy's family from St. John and put him in St. George, so that family could not vote for him. And people don't understand how Tom and those fellas did the gerrymandering. It's just like how Mayor called an election in COVID. Historically, the BLP win when there's a low poll. It doesn't take anybody too wise to know that. You just have to look at statistics. There's a demon. A person who recognizes that and will put people's life at risk is a demon. I know where this is going. I'm not afraid of anything. I know where this voice is going. And I know they will hear it. I don't care. Because we are too afraid in Barbados to say things that we have to say. You see Ralph again in Parliament. Oh. Be strong. That's all I can say. Be strong. Bad behaved people interrupting you because you're making points and they can't answer you. But you're holding your own. Do you agree? Are you listening to him? Hold your own. And you know when somebody's speaking from sense and sensibility both. Sense and sensibility. Brains as well as feelings. You can feel it. You can feel it. I can feel it. I can feel it. I can feel it when he's in that parliament. And all of them ganging up like a pack of, what word should I say? Noisy people, that's all I will say. And he's man enough to stand up there, and you know what he has? A sense of humor. The sense of humor of this world. And he calms them down. And he gives them advice. But that's deeper, isn't it? Then you're fully yourself and you know yourself. You're fully sure who you are. You don't get bothered. You don't get bothered. Not that you don't understand that that there is a kind of hostility in people that they will try to pretend it is not there. And they're only joking. And they don't have a little chat. It isn't so. It isn't so. In politics, when you go into politics, you have to know that those persons who are in parliament, who pretend to be civil, have people down there who ain't civil one bit, boy. If they have to do something to you, they will do it. You understand what I'm saying? So have this man's back for me. You hear what I tell you? Have this man's back. Everybody, have this man's back. You hear what I tell you? All right. It's not going to be an easy fight. But if you all think so, think again. Commit yourself to work, because we have to work very, very hard to come back from where we are. Because we did some, and I'm saying this to you here, we caused some problems for ourselves. We've done that. So that makes your job even more difficult than it was before. Okay? But don't despair. Errol Barrow. This is my way of talking about. In closing, I should like to emphasize that Barrow led his country through the declining years of the Cold War without feeling the ravages of ideological conflict which created factionalism and sometimes open conflict in so many of the other Caribbean territories. Issues of land reform were addressed through the Tenantries Act. And I'm going to say this to you, and listen to me, please. Derek Alley knows I had to give a lecture on, I think, the 40th anniversary of the Tenantry Freehold Act. It was Errol Barrow who started delivering tenantries. But he ran into a problem. You cannot divide the 350 plantations in Barbados. You could not organize those tenantries because we did not have land surveyors. What do you think Errol Barrow did? Community college, and told them, set up training for land surveyors. So that by the time Tom came in, Tom had all the land surveyors he wanted. So he was able then to do the Tenantry Freehold Act, and people can get the tenantry land transferred to them, and they are praising Tom. It was Errol Barrow. He started in Bridgetown and St. Michael, Bank Hall, and those kind of tenantries first. We don't credit him sometimes. We don't understand clearly what he did for us. And you'll see that I've not done too much about education because I take that for granted that you all understand that Errol Barrow transformed education. I'm not going over that road again, but I want you to do the other things that he did. And I want to say this. The peace dividend of his regime. That's what they call it. He gave us a peace dividend. Errol Barrow's period was peace. From the time he came in up to when he went, it was peace. Barbados was a land of peace. Barbados was a land of prosperity. It was not a pox country. Barrow's biggest dividend to us was peace. You understand what I'm saying? He gave us peace. These people here have brought war. Pox. And that's serious business because my grandchildren have to come up in that environment. And I don't know. I cannot predict for you what will happen in the next 5 years, next 10 years, if it keeps going the way how it is going, unless you change this administration and put the Democratic Labour Party of Errol Barrow back there. Now, as a trade unionist, I cannot stay away from the concept of social partnership as part of the peace dividend. While Errol did not formalize the social partner, he was able to encourage frank tripartite discussions in the country, and was with good terms with leading trade unions such as the late Right Excellent Frank Walker and the late Mr. Horatio Cook. You all remember Horatio? He was also on good terms with leaders in industry such as Kiara Hunt and Douglas Lynch, both of whom were knighted for their contributions to industrial development. But I was into this race thing. I am not into it. I make the point. I am a Caribbean man. I'm a Creole. We all are here mixed up. The white planter class did what they did. And we have to correct that. But in the long run, we have to live in Barbados as Barbadians, as citizens of the same country. And our job is to make sure that the same group that held on to all the power and all the wealth doesn't continue to do that. And we will do that by raising up our people, giving them opportunities, giving them encouragement. But most important, giving them self-confidence. My color has nothing to do with my ability. My height has nothing to do with my ability. My shape has nothing to do with my ability. It is this: my brain, my mind, my character. That is what we have to let those children know. That's what we have to let the children know. It's not how I wear my hair. That's a style. It's not a statement. I have to be very careful going here. But I'm going. Errol Barrow, as they said, his father was a priest, an Anglican priest. He got fired by the church. You know why? He was also the headmaster at the Allen School. And what he found out is that monies that belonged to the Allen School for the poor children that were coming in, the black people and they were getting at that time, was being taken by the planters to do roads in their plantations and all sorts of things, rather than spend it on educating the black people. In 1920s, early 20th century, Errol Barrow's father, man, was like Errol. He was a radical. And he got up against him. And the Friday, he had to leave Barbados, St. Vincent, Virgin Islands, all over the place, to make a living. So I need you to understand it's not just a one generation thing. It's not just a one generation thing, this thing about social democracy, about peaceful change and elevating people. Barrow left in his will for us that determination that we have to change things for our people. There has to be a better way. There has to be a different way than a group of people who just exchanging seats in Parliament because they want to be called the honorable and looking to see how much money they can get out of it. I do not hear much philosophy coming out of the Parliament these days. That's the truth. Tell me who is a good parliamentary speaker in the Barbados Labour Party. Tell me who speaks that grips your attention. They speak like bookkeepers and shopkeepers. That's how they speak to me. I don't get the feel of intellect. I don't feel like I have to listen to them. That's the truth. But I've always decided that might be me, foolish boy, ignorant man. Me. But if you're experiencing the same thing, it can't be just me. I do not get any feeling of elevation coming out of it at all. It's a very bad feeling when you are at the stage of saying that you're a republic, but you're not enthused by the conversations in your parliament. Is it true? Except for Ralph, who talking? Who talking? Who talking? Who's saying anything at all to lift up the young people to make them feel? Everybody is praising one person all the time. That's all that's happening. Everybody has this person feeling that there. And they've done it now with the press. It's the most depressing thing. But again, remember I spent a lot of my time, 30 years, in the trade union movement. So I had to be able to see who owned what. So I know who owned the shares in the nation. I know who owned the shares in the nation. Big political personages. And I can't tell you the names because I will have to ask my political leader first if I was to do it. Because in Barbados, we don't talk about certain people because there are big lawyers, might even be judges, the people who have shares in these companies, and therefore can determine what editorial policy is. So when the editorial policy is decided by these persons, don't think that the people that call editing those sort of things can determine anything else. It is just the same way how they treat the CBC as property. And you remember they used to say that a man called Franex Shorten used to talk. But you know that he could have, because CBC is a government organization, so he could have gone in there and talk. But he didn't. He didn't choose to do that, you see? So, Barbados was a model of development and modernizing for small open economy. He's credited with inheriting a village and transforming it into a nation. In doing so, he helped to locate it within a regional integration structure, which was largely a product of his initiative. It is important and appropriate to continue a lecture series in honor of this outstanding Barbadian and Caribbean patriarch, the Right Excellent Errol Barrow. In other words, the leader just did what he considered an excellent thing on Errol Barrow. I made my contribution today. I'm advising the party to continue on a series of discussions about people like Errol Barrow. Don't let them hold you today or a week. Let people who work with Errol Barrow come and talk to the young people and even to some of the older people who were not in the circle about what he did and move it from Errol Barrow. Talk about Sandyford. Talk about Thompson. Talk about Stewart. When the gentleman who left, I won't call his name, called me and told me that he wanted me to take over this series of lectures. I was very sure that I didn't know who he was talking to. He doesn't know me. I take the invitation to come here to talk today because of who it is coming from. I told him respectfully, no, sir. You can't tell me you can change the colors of the place. You can revise the Democratic Labour Party and come with a new thing. That was his mission to come with. And asking me, a man that was with Errol Barrow from day one, to be part of that. But we're past that. And there's no looking back. There is no looking back. But I'll tell you this now, and I mean it. 15 and 15 more, right? 15 more. And then non-thought work. All of you who are here for a purpose and a reason. The peace dividend that Errol Barrow gave us because of the things that I've mentioned and several things I could have put in, I'm not putting in. That peace dividend stands to be lost because the Barbados Labour Party wants to bury the Democratic Labour Party. And they're using all their surrogates, including the ones that we got out of here. Those are surrogates. They were placed in here to do what they tried to do. What they met up against that they did not expect people like you. But I'm telling you now, we're only at the start of the work. As I said, people of my age, let me be very honest with you. People of my age, at 77, and that sort of thing, we will come and share with you sometime, and we'll work with you. Go and get the young people. Your plans and your strategy is to bring out the young people. You have to work on them. Therefore, think young. Get some young advice. Hold the ones that you had already. Hold the ones that you had already. Middle-aged, old, and that sort of thing. When I sat down, the lecture is basically over, but I want to share two things with you. I sat down, but let me say this. 2001 election, I had to manage that in St. Thomas. I went and I managed 2003 with Dennis Lowe because I liked what Dennis was doing and he worked hard in St. Thomas. So I went and managed him in 2003, 2008, 2013, 2018. I managed those with Lowe. I managed in 2013 for the party and 2018, even though I knew that we lost every seat before I took over. I knew that. I had no doubt about that because Wickham had sent me the poll. We had all the information and so on. And not only that, but I'll tell you this. We had lost 54,000 votes. Election by election. I have all the election reports there. And I have about 3 extra sets from about 2008 down to 2018. I have sets of the election results that anybody that wants, I give them to Ralph, and you can then share to whoever wants them. Because your manager is going to need that kind of information. And go through it. They have to go through box by box, constituency by constituency, and look at those numbers, how they have changed over the years. Because your job is to reverse that, to be winning numbers and not coming down numbers, etc. So you don't start by politics by going up on the platform and talking. You have to start by looking at the work you have to do first. What have I lost? Where do I have to pull back? And you do that analysis. And when you do that, then you get the people who can go with you to bring the people back, because that is part of our problem. The Dems would stay away and don't vote. The Dems would stay away and don't vote. They would stay home and don't vote. The bees will come out and sting you. They will come and vote. Even if they're vexed with their leaders, they will come out and vote. So we have a job ahead of us. As I said, I'm prepared to work at the constituency level. I'm helping myself, but again, not like any 50-year-old boy or 40-something-year-old, like I help myself as a 70-year-old man, recognizing that. Tell the truth. And therefore, any experience or knowledge or whatever else that I can put and share, Rafi, at your disposal. Thank you all very much.
Morris. Do we have any questions in the room for the comrade? Oh, okay. I'm just making my way.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank you, Bobby Morris, for just basically illustrating Errol Barrow for me because I wasn't there to meet him. So, yeah, but all I would have had was I would go to school, I would hear, oh, he's the father of independence, but I don't really understand what that means for me, or I believe it from my peers. You'll just hear, oh, we got education, we take that for granted. But to hear exactly the type of person he was a fighter, the opportunities he opened for us, and just listening to that alone is inspiring, and I feel like it will help everyone to see and motivate, like, how can we be more like that?
How can we?
How can we be more like that? How can we be more innovative? How can we reach people more? So I think that that's just something that is just, yeah, just something that is just needed for each of us. Um, and yeah, that's just something I would just like to see more. And I know we're coming from a hard place right now, but we're growing. And I just want to encourage everyone to be inspired. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me say this, that the business of planning and winning an election, this is the highlight of everything that we do, calls for a lot of work. You need so many position papers written. Seriously. In the campaigns that I have managed, so many people were writing a summary of what the BLP did, a summary of what the BLP never did. These are the things that you should go over with. Can't call the names. But a lot of our supporters are willing to write ideas for you, put things down for you. And you can't now, as a leader, take them as they come. You have to have a group with you that will sift out these things. The most important thing, of course, and people better believe it, elections are oftentimes only determined after the manifesto comes out, because that manifesto is a collection of promises to people. All right? And I remember 2 elections I was in, that I didn't get a chance to read the manifesto. I was reading the manifesto when the campaign had started. And I was reading it when it was handed out on the platform. That's not a good position to be in. A manifesto should be prepared well in advance of an election. You still have to be very careful in terms of keeping it secret. So you don't want the other side knowing, because they will be able to deal with that country. But at the same time, your key people must be able almost to recite that manifesto by heart. They must understand it. So the manifesto preparing team has to be bright, very confidential, very trustworthy. Believe me, those are some real key people. And they have to be given the opportunity and the time to do it. And then the top people in the party have to be able to flesh it out to see what can work and what cannot work. So that's one of the things I want people to understand, the preparation that is needed. Also, as I said, nobody can tell me that they can satisfy me unless they have canvassed their constituency house by house at least 4 times. Let me tell you how I use the canvas. Again, all this is inside here. I go in here. You, I come here. Who you voting for? You, Bobby. I said, thank you very much. I talk to you and I make a note. Huh? I got my pen and I make a note. I go there. You. The woman say to you, who she's voting for? Man, she's a blast with DLP, man. Don't buy what she tell you. You think I done there? I gone to the third person now. You listen. Who those 2 persons that I just came from vote for? And if I get a total 3 or 3 out of 3, I take in that. But you'll be surprised sometimes what people will tell you just to fool you. So my systematic canvassing used to tell me fairly clearly at the end of the day, when I came back in that office, what was the likelihood in a particular area. And I would say, look, I wasting time in YB2. Because YB2 ain't voting for me. I know how many votes I will get there, and it's not worth my time spending time in there where YB1 has some uncertain ones that I can swing my side. Because you're never concerned about the ones that will vote for you. Once you're sure about that there, you don't have to waste that time. Because people don't just get up and change the voting patterns. Mm-hmm. Something has to do that. So if you're a seasoned voter and you know that, you don't have to waste your time, but you still have to pass by them. You understand? Because the first thing when you go there, you're trying to find out who is who. Mm-hmm. You understand? The second time you're talking message. And third time is like literature sharing. When you go, yes, third time, you know, kind of reflects about yourself, the stuff about the party and so on. You need at least 3 of those kinds of campaigns structured, one layering over the other. And then the next 2 out of the 5, it just fairly cut. What's happening? Come around and somebody say, come in and have a drink. If people don't invite you in your house there, you have a drink, even if it is Marby, unless they're going to vote for you. So the more drinks that you have to refuse and say, when my belly too full, you know that you are. There are canvassing things that our colleagues have to be able to share with you if you're young people going up there canvassing, because the canvas gets more votes than the platform. We better understand that. Am I right? The canvas gets more votes than the platform. The platform, you're swaying ideas, getting people to understand things, etc. But the canvassing is a personal thing. They're looking you in your eye. They know if you're honest or dishonest by how your eyes shift or don't shift. They learn a lot of things about you by that. So understand that you need to train your canvassers. You have to train the canvassers. Don't pick up where everybody say, you want to go with you? Canvassers must be trained people whom you, in other words, the nearest person to yourself that you could find send. Somebody who replicates you, who thinks like you, who behaves like you and so on. That's your canvasser. If you're not too happy with this person in terms of how they carry themselves, tell them so. Love you very much, but I don't think that's the one I want you to drive a car. But you might not be a canvasser. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm being real. You need canvassers who will draw bodies and souls to you and commitments and that sort of thing. And I'm so much looking forward, to tell the truth, Rafi, where I can get the chance to do some work at that kind of level. Somebody come to me, my wife, my son will bring me to, sit down and talk for a couple of hours with young people, etc. Come back home. The platform thing, you can get too much of me to do that, unless I get a command or something like that there, and that is with you. I ain't know where you're going. That's your business. I see they can hold up on that and they can press it out. That's your business. I want you to, this offering, still on? Can we close down this one?
Okay. We had.
Yeah, let her up. Yeah. Yeah. The people that are on you're pretty certain that there are people.
No.
I bet everybody.
Okay.
So hold that one to me. I want to talk something here.
Okay, we have
You understand?
We have a couple questions online. So let me read a couple of those and then we can go, then we can shut down. Okay. Someone wanted to know if you can go into further detail on the 40s group, who belong to it, and how do members of this group transform themselves? You want me to read all the questions one time?
Pardon?
Do you want me to read all the other questions one time?
If I want. Continue the question.
Do you want me to read the other questions first, or you're going to answer that one first?
Questions from the okay. Uh-huh. Yeah, pass on the thing, yes, yes. But in the meantime, as right, that see how many questions you have for me.
I have 3 questions online for you.
3 already? Okay.
Okay.
Let them go then.
All right. Well,
Sorry, I'm moving out of your structure. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Sorry, that's okay. I can answer this last one then. As a candidate, I believe that we should canvass each and every house. Could you give a few tips on approaching homes we know are traditional BLP homes? So if you know a home is like a Barbados Liberal Party home, how do we navigate going to that home?
Okay. My own advice? I don't know if there is any certainty in one election, the next election, about who will be and who will be. People change in between. And you really would not know unless you test the waters. My thing is, you go to a BLP house. I used to canvass every house, that's the truth. Whether it's B or D, I canvass every house. Eh? I canvass my own, I don't take anything for granted. But listen, look. Let me tell you something now. My father was the secretary of Christchurch East when I ran as a candidate. Hallie told me, my friend, that in St. Patrick's, Tom Adams got up on the platform and said, well, you don't know how Livy Morris allowed his son to run against Bernard St. John. My father asked for the microphone, asked the chairman to allow him to speak. And my father said, Mr. Adams, that's the most unfortunate comment you've made. My son is his own man. And he will make up his mind what he has to do. And I'll tell you this, all of my children have to vote for him. You want to hear this now? I have the delegates booklet for the Barbados Workers Party conference that year. My father was a delegate. My father took my brothers and sisters on the platform at Wharton. It's something I would never do. My father took my brothers and sisters on the platform at Wharton and tell them, this is your brother. Don't mind me. My time is gone. I can't change. That's been like that for a long time. It's the future. And that is the truth. I'm telling you the truth. I don't mess around. Let me tell you something.
People are watching. And somebody wanted to know. And the 40s.
Okay, I'll repeat the
40s?
question for you. Someone online wanted to know about the under 40 group. How did those members of that group transform themselves?
But let me put it this way. The under 40s group was a collection of basically university people, a lot of so-called young intellectuals and so on. So you had Henry Ford, who else come out of that now? Colin Reed, a number of people, but they were mixed in terms of politics. Henry became B, and Colin Reed, Coochie Reed, was a strong Dem. But they were intellectuals, and they were shaping then as a young generation that will come into the next level for political representation and so on. They were bright people, considered to be right people, because in those days, unlike today, in those days, a university degree was very, very rare. There weren't many people with university degrees back in the 1960s. And most of them, because remember, the Capitol campus and so on only started in the late 60s. So very few people have gone up to Mona because you had to get a scholarship to go up there. So there weren't very many university people. So people who had a university degree in those days would have been considered to be bright, the elite. Nowadays, there's so many people with university degrees. We're in a different world. Almost all of our children and grandchildren at university. And not only at university, but in the elite areas of law, elite areas of medicine and so on. Completely different thing today. You have to come when you go there as a politician that you are dealing with a number of people in households who are very well educated. So when you're coming to them, you have to come with something that they want to be able to follow and that they can buy into. It's very, very difficult from the group that will just take a drink and that sort of thing, or the old group that came along saying, well, my father was DLP, my mother was DLP, my grandfather was DLP. As I said, my generation was not like that. My father was this is where I am. And he had to respect me just as I respected him. You see, so times are changing in that respect. So the under 40 group then went their own way. Some went DLP, some went DLP, and that faded out. Because the real reason why they came together was about the federation. You see, that was a interest-based grouping based on a particular circumstance. So they had no life after that. I would say this, though, that if you take the notion that, let's say, seniority starts about 40, let's say that roughly speaking, that under 40s group is very important to us right now. That is a group that we have to canvass. We have to canvass that very, very seriously, because they are now at the age where they've had a whole lot of BLP coming at them. Understand? And I'm going to say this again, I'm not going outside, I'm just in here. Right. Only people in here. Huh? Huh? I'm still online. But to our people, you say anybody at all. Anyhow, right? What I'm saying is that
let me just, okay. What I will do is we will do the voter thanks and close off the session so that Comrade Bobby Mars can talk to the membership in person in more detail and explain what he wanted to say.
sorry.
No, we're going to do the voter thanks right now so that we could close off the online element. Okay. Comrade Robert Barbara Mars, I would like to thank you for coming today, for accepting the invitation to do this presentation. I know many of you here in person and online had a very informative session, and we did learn a lot. And I know that this recording of this session will be something that we can use for years to come to educate the current membership, incoming membership, and the future youth of Barbados coming in. Thank you very much, Comrade, for coming and giving this presentation today.
So we can carry on an internal conversation here.